Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Max Hirsh. I'm the Managing Director of the Airport City Academy, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you this afternoon about airport urbanism and the future of the Keflavik Airport area. So today we're going to be looking at three questions. First, what is airport urbanism, or AU for short? Second, how can we apply airport urbanism to leverage development opportunities here in Iceland? And finally, a question that I'm sure many of you in the audience are very interested in today: what are the opportunities for the successful bidder? So let's start by taking a look at the first question: what is airport urbanism? So airport urbanism is a people-focused approach to developing airports and to planning urban development in the airport area, focusing on the needs and desires of the people who live and work in the airport area and who use the airport on a regular basis. Airport urbanism advances development strategies that deliver benefits both to the airport and to the city and region that it serves. And that's because I firmly believe that airports and cities grow best when they grow together. Now, that's a concept that came out of a book that I published by the same name, Airport Urbanism. And that book is based on a decade of research that I did at more than 50 airports around the world. In that book, I draw on hundreds of interviews that I did with airport directors, with commercial developers, with urban planners, with policymakers, and with architects and urban designers. And I use that data to do two things. First, I identified the key drivers that fundamentally determine the success or failure of any airport-led urban development project. And second, and maybe more broadly, I really wanted to understand why developing the airport area matters for airports and why it matters for cities. So why has this become such a priority? What's at stake? Well, from the airport's perspective, real estate has become an essential part of the airport business model. Now, before COVID, airports on average were making about 15 to 20% of their revenue from property development. And over the past year, what we've seen is that real estate has become an even bigger priority, and that's because the pandemic has taught airports a valuable lesson. If you want to survive, you need to diversify your income sources, and in particular, you need to expand what's called your non-passenger revenue sources, because these non-passenger revenue sources are immune to sudden changes in passenger numbers. So that could be things like cargo, like real estate, or landside retail. When travelers evaporate, they keep generating income for the airport. But successful airports recognize that developing real estate is much more than just another revenue source. It also acts as an insurance policy against underlying risks in the aviation industry. And it provides a much needed financial cushion when unexpected events lead to a sudden decline in passenger revenue. That could be a terror attack, maybe an airline goes bankrupt, or maybe like we're experiencing right now, you have a wide-scale public health emergency. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're seeing right now is a paradigm shift in how airports make money. Passenger air service will always be the airport's core business, but non-passenger services like cargo, like real estate, like landside retail are going to play a much larger role in the coming business cycle. So that's why developing the airport area matters for airports, but what about for cities? Why does it matter for them? Well, around the world, successful cities have come to recognize that airports are essential drivers of economic development. Airports are one of the largest employment centers in the country. So, for example, here in Iceland, almost 2% of the national workforce is employed at Keflavik. Airports are also one of the best connected places in the country, and policymakers are leveraging that connectivity to advance a broad range of regional and national development goals. What are some of those goals? Well, one of them is to develop tourist destinations outside of city centers and to spread the benefits of tourism to a wider region. And a good solution for that is to build attractions and hotels near the airport, which is, after all, where visitors arrive. Another goal is to strengthen the regional competitiveness by shortening the supply chains that connect local industries to global markets. Successful cities are doing that by consolidating manufacturing, assembly, and shipment facilities around the airport that are tailored to specific industries, like fresh food, for example, or pharmaceuticals. Successful cities are also developing innovation districts that use the airport as a test bed for new technologies in the fields of aviation, logistics, and building technologies. And in doing that, they're engaging with some of the big picture challenges that we face today. So things like digitalization, the future of work, and adapting to climate change. So that's a little bit of background to explain why developing the airport area is a priority both for airports and also for cities and regions. And that's given rise to airport-led urban development projects on almost every continent. Now, while writing my book, I visited more than 50 of these projects, and here's the bad news. A lot of the projects I visited had failed to deliver a real return on investment, and actually they'd been a huge waste of time and money. And here are some photos of those projects. I tried to understand why they weren't working, and what I found was that the less successful airports out there were trying to build a generic business district. Basically, they started with a predetermined set of building types like office parks and logistics hubs, and they assumed that by definition the airport would be an attractive place for companies to do business. But what they weren't really asking themselves are, hey, who are our target customers and what are our target industries? And above all, they didn't have an implementation plan that addressed important issues like governance, land ownership, investment attraction, and market demand. Now, by contrast, successful airports begin the concept development process by focusing on people, specifically the people who live, work, and run businesses in the airport area. They investigate their needs and desires, and they use those customer insights to come up with site-specific development strategies. That focus on people is the most important principle of airport urbanism. So why should we take that approach? Well, ultimately, the economic dynamics at the airport and the airport area revolve around three sets of actors. You have passengers who are flying in and out. You've got employees who work at the airport, for the airlines, and in aviation-linked industries. And you've got residents. And by local residents, I mean people who live in the airport area, who work, and also who run businesses in the airport area. Successful airports and successful cities strategize how future developments can satisfy their needs. So what kinds of passenger services and amenities for local residents are currently missing? What are the goals of the local business community? What are the needs of their workforce? And what are the barriers to industry innovation? Above all, how can future development in the airport area address these unmet demands? Now, at Kadeco, we're applying airport urbanism to identify development opportunities in the Keflavik airport area. And to do that, we're taking a three-step approach to identify synergies between the strategic goals of the airport, the city, and the local community. And we're taking that three-step approach to pinpoint Keflavik's competitive advantages and also to see how our ambitions and challenges here in Iceland fit into a larger global picture. Over the past year, we've shortlisted some big picture goals that will shape our future vision for the Keflavik airport area. We see the master plan as a platform for innovation and value creation in key industries that are critical for the success of the entire Icelandic economy. So industries like aviation, seafood, and tourism. And by drawing attention to Keflavik's competitive advantages, we see the master plan as a vehicle to attract new investment, both from within Iceland and from abroad. Lastly, let's not forget that the population in the airport area is growing very quickly. In fact, it's not just the fastest growing region in Iceland, it's one of the fastest in the Northern Hemisphere. We see the master plan as an opportunity to guide sustainable urban development in the airport area for decades to come. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these are ambitious goals, and we can't achieve them on our own. Bringing a multidisciplinary design team on board is a crucial next step to realizing our future vision for the airport area. And in the last few remaining minutes, I'd like to share with you some of our current thinking about the upcoming competition. Now, in a nutshell, we'd like to ask bidders to focus on 3 challenges. The first one is to present an initial design approach for catalytic sites that will be developed in the next 5 years. One of those sites is a section of the highway that links the airport to the capital region. This is a strategically important site for a number of reasons. It's visitors' first impression of Iceland. It's one of the busiest roads, in fact, the busiest road in the country. And it also connects 2 neighborhoods that will be growing very quickly in the coming decade. Another site has direct access to the airfield at Keflavik, and it's suitable for industrial development, for emerging aviation technologies, and also for training programs for the local workforce. Now, what's the second challenge? Well, we'd like to ask each bidder to reflect on some high-level questions from a strategic development perspective. One of those is, how can we leverage the airport area's competitive advantages to attract new industries and new investment? And here we'd like to emphasize Keflavik's excellent connections, not just by air, but also by sea. And we'd ask you to bear in mind the large supply of attractively priced geothermal energy. The second question is, how can we develop a cargo infrastructure for the airport area? Our ambition is to establish a holistic approach to managing the flow of air cargo to Keflavik, and also maritime cargo to 2 deep-sea harbors that are located just a short drive from the airport. And third, how can we improve connectivity between Keflavik and the Reykjavik capital region to raise the attractiveness of the airport area as a place to live, to work, and to visit? Now, the final challenge will be to create a toolkit of planning and design guidelines that can be widely adopted across the airport area. And in this context, there are sort of 2 overarching goals here. The first question is, how can we advance sustainable urban design and sustainable transport solutions at lower population densities? And the second question is, what kinds of wayfinding and placemaking strategies can we deploy to make the airport area more legible to visitors, and to create a sense of place for the thousands of people who live and who work here? So to sum up, from my perspective, there are 2 key opportunities here for those of you in the audience today who are thinking of bidding on this project. First, the successful bidder will work together with us to create a compelling urban design vision and a commercially viable implementation plan. This strategic master plan will establish the spatial, economic, and aesthetic framework for the airport area for decades to come. The successful bidder will have a major long-term impact on the design and development of one of Iceland's most valuable national assets. The successful bidder will also have a unique opportunity to take the master plan's vision forward through 1 or more near-term projects in the next 5 years. And maybe just to end on a personal note, I'd just like to say it's been a real pleasure to work together with the team here at Kadeco. To really get a complex project like this off the ground, you need to have the right combination of talent, momentum, and also support both from the government and from the private sector. And I think that the Kadeco Master Plan has all of those essential ingredients in place. So thanks a lot for listening, and now I'd like to hand things over to Stuart Cairns. Stuart is going to walk us through some important next steps in the procurement process.